Oh, okay. So let me, so this is something I'm gonna go kind of very briefly, and because we typically do have, we did a bootcamp focused especially on submitting data to FaceBase, and this is also something that we typically do. Sometimes we also do individual demonstration for users. Once the users that want to submit data, sometimes they contact us and we give them a 1 hour tutorial on a Zoom call on how to go through the process. But anyways, I think that I want to briefly mention a little bit about submitting data to FaceBase. So, so this slide kind of shows the process someone goes through when trying to submit data. So typically you go to that submit page in our menu, you fill in your form. That form is received by us. We send that for review by the FaceBase committee. If that application gets accepted, then if it's human data, then we have to go through some additional steps that may require the IRB certification. If it's not human, then we continue setting up the project for each of these data. Once that project is set up in our catalog, you receive an email saying that you need to join the Globus group so that you can actually start writing to the catalog. So we've seen pretty much everything is, the control of all different type of data the access of all data is controlled by different groups. So once you are a member of the group that is associated to your project, then you can go and set up and upload and create data sets for your project, and that protects you that no one else outside your project will be able to modify or see your data until that data is released. So once you go through that process, you start creating your data sets and uploading data. Then we go through a sort of, once you're done with that, you tell us, okay, I'm done editing or curating my data sets. Then we go through a review of your quality, and then the data set gets released. So typically, like we have here, typically, from the time you submit your form to the time we set up your project, that typically takes between 2 to 3 weeks. And then you can start creating your data sets, and that's a time where some people do it quicker and some people don't do it much slower. And then, some data sets get released right away once they are reviewed. Other data sets, we get asked to kind of embargo them because people don't want to release the data set until they have a paper out or some publication. So they tell us, okay, the data set is complete, but don't release it now. Release it when I tell you so, because I'm waiting for this paper. Okay, so that's kind of like the main flow. So the main data submission resources, the main starting point is the link to the submitting data that we're going to see now. Then again, I want to make emphasis on our curation wiki that has a very good, very detailed documentation of step-by-step how to submit data and how to enter data in these different stages and how to upload the data to FaceBase. But also, like I mentioned, if you still feel like you would actually like some sort of like a direct interaction, you can email us at help@facebase.org, and we can set up a sort of like 1 hour walkthrough of the site and help you how to get started submitting data. So let me go very briefly through that, what we just talked about. So again, you will start here in how to submit data page, right? We have, this is what I was talking about, the data submission form. So if you're new to FaceBase, you come to this page, you click, you fill in your this data submission form, your full name, email, institution, and then give us some specifics about the type of data you're trying to submit. And then after you submit that form, we get that form that gets submitted to the FaceBase committee. If the data gets approved or it's okay for submission, then you receive an email to how to join the group that would allow you to start editing data. So once that gets once you go through that data submission process, then what we're gonna do is set up your project. So once your project was created and you were added to that project, then you can go to your project site, search for your project. I'm gonna use, for example, the demonstration project. And once you're in your specific project, you can start creating data sets. But as you can see, I go to this project, I don't see anything in order to how to create a data set. And that's because we need to be logged in. So only people that are logged in, you're gonna be able to, if you're a member of that project, you're gonna be able to create data sets for that project. So now I just went through that Globus login, and now I can see I'm a member of this group, so I can see the data sets that have been created for that project. So in there, if you wanna now create a new data set, you just click the add record, and you go through this very first basic page for creating your new data set. So the most basic information is the title. We want this title to be as representative as possible of the type of data research that was involved in producing this data. Then you create a description that also we want to be as detailed as possible. As you can see, all the forms, all the fields that have kind of like this menu that indicates that it's a rich field or markdown field. So you can be very specific. You can use lists, you can add images, you can add links, etc. And then same thing, if you want something a little bit more specific, then we have a field for the study design, description, study, and then we have these fields that, if you want to require a DOI for that data set, typically we say yes. There's no reason for not having a DOI associated to that data set, but you can turn that off if you want to. And then the release and release date fields, that's something we control. So a regular user will probably see that gray out, but those are how we control whether the data set is released. And by the release, what we mean is that once the data set is released, a public or anonymous user can actually see that data and download files that are available for that data. While the data set is not released, only you and members of your group can see the actual work that's been done in curating that data set. So once that data set is created, we go through this kind of main page, and as we can see, we have the top level section of the data set that Rob was talking about. Now it's kind of blank, and you need to start adding these tags, what we call these high level tags, to describe the data set. And that's the kind of metadata that then is used to filter and facet on to find the data set. So we want this to be as accurate as possible. Then you will start adding all the different elements of your data set, like genome browser, thumbnail images. You will start adding all the information about the experiments, biosamples, replicates that relate the biosample to the experiment, and you will start adding all your data. Once you have all that structure, you can start uploading the data. So I'm not gonna go through the details of how do you create a data set, of how to create experiments and biosamples and replicates, but I wanna show you a little bit how you will, once you have done all that, how you can go and use the Deriva tool to upload the data. So imagine that you have already created this data set and added all this require elements like experiments, biosample, and replicates, then you can use the Deriva upload tool, which is this one here from our Deriva toolset, to basically upload all the files that you want to upload to your data set. And that's a very convenient tool that it works very robust like the export tool, but requires a file organization in your local machine. So once you define the data set, then you organize your files in a certain way, and then you use this tool to upload all the data to the files, to the data set. And if the data is well organized, it will directly go into the correct location in your data set, and it will be shown in the browser. So let me go again here to very briefly to our curation wiki and show you a little bit of that data structure I'm talking about. So that's, again, very well described here. And this is very simple, shows the way you need to organize your file. So once you created your data set and your experiments and your biosamples and the replicates, then basically what you do is you, in your local machine, you created a folder structure that the top level folder is basically the record ID or RID of your data set. Then for each replicate, you will create a directory with a record ID, with a record identifier for that replicate. And under that directory, you're gonna start creating subdirectories for the sequencing data, process data, image data, mesh data, thumbnails, or array data. So once you have that structure created, you can go now to your client tool, for the Deriva upload utility. You will first log in using the Globus authentication with the user ID that is associated to that group. And then you need to verify that, use the option to verify that the tool is actually pointing to the correct server. And then you can just, I'm gonna browse to one example that I used in the past. For example, I'm gonna point to this directory, this 1-T4ZA, that's the record identifier for the data set that I'm interested in uploading the data. So once I point to that folder, it will show me all the files that are in there with the structure. You see that for each, we have basically 2 different replicates. One is a 1-T50E and the other one 1-T50G. These are the 2 different, let's say, replicates that I have in the experiment that I have created. And then once you go through that sort of validation phase, you just click upload, and this will upload all the files to the data set. And then if you navigate back to that data set, you will see that all those files have been uploaded. So again, I want just to touch very briefly on that. And then if there are no more questions about uploading data,